The Rock and Roll and Coffee Show is brought to you by Retroactive, located at Broadway at the Beach in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, taking you back to the 70s, 80s, and 90s. ShopRetroactive.com. Pick up your bottle of the Rock and Roll and Coffee Show Hot Rockin' Hot Sauce now at Retroactive or rnrcoffeeshow.com.
It's the Rock and Roll and Coffee Show. Yeah, we do.
Robert, you just got off the 80s cruise, right?
Just did, yes, yesterday.
How was that for you guys?
Uh, you know, we went into it having done, well, let's see. I think this is only my fifth or sixth time out ever on a cruise. As a rule, we weren't necessarily seeking that sort of thing. So we've been on one Monsters very early on, like an early West Coast one. If you remember, they did one that was only like a few days. It wasn't a full week thing.
Gotcha.
Uh, but two Kiss cruises, which I loved. I mean, I knew kind of what to get into, what it was going to be all about, but I didn't. I think we all got a little pleasantly surprised with how these fans are just, again, like the Kiss cruise. Everybody's got a Kiss story. Everybody's got a fan thing. It's a very fan centric thing. It's not all about the shows. It's so much more about the interaction between all the shipmates, if you will. It was the happiest bunch of people I'd ever seen, for that demographic, that genre, however you want to play, it seemed like mostly people that have lived through it the first time. If if you were around in that time, it's one of those, if you know,
Yeah.
And I talked to the production team, a fantastic production team too, because you never know going in with a new set of people. The Kiss cruises are handled by Sixth Man, which is a third party company that comes in and handles all the stuff, and they do a fantastic job. So, but speaking with the production people, they were so on top of it, so helpful, so complimentary. So like anything we can do, you guys are so easy. Like I love hearing that because that means that they don't perceive you as being a pain in their ass or asking for anything, outlandish or anything like that. We did, we were able to do a gig last Saturday night in Orlando, at SeaWorld of all places. It's amazing.
Oh, wow.
Where you're going to end up, but we've done that 3, 4 times. I think this was our third. The next morning, get on the ship in Miami and do our performances Monday, Tuesday, and then I flew home out of Puerto Rico when we landed there. Took all day yesterday, but it was worth it.
Yeah. So how does that work? I was curious about that. So you're scheduled to play whatever days you're scheduled to play on the boat. So do you always get on the boat when it leaves port, or do you fly to some spot every now and then, depending on your days? Or
well, in this particular case, like I said, we were able to join up and then bail in when the ship hit San Juan yesterday.
Okay.
So not completely all the way through. The band Squeeze, if you remember the band Squeeze, I'm a fan. They were fantastic. They got to get on the ship in Miami, play their first 2 shows, and they left the ship the next morning. So I guess it's whatever you negotiate, or however you do a Q&A, you do some other stuff. We did a behind the music sort of interview thing with the theater we played in, or the theater on the other side of the ship, full of fans. Had, I guess, in some way, gotten to do that. I don't think it was everybody on the ship, but everybody who wanted to. Interviewed by Alan Hunter from the old MTV.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I didn't know Alan, but it turns out we have a ton of mutual friends. So we got on really well. And he had seen our show Monday, where Mark Goodman introduced us, which was funny.
That's fun.
Yeah, it's like Julie Brown, the whole thing.
Yeah.
But I know I'd met all these people in the past. So, from back in the day, when it, as I like to say, when the M stood for music, so it was full of all that nostalgia.
Yeah. Well, it sounds fun. I've never been on one. I've never been on a Monsters Rock. I've never been on 80s or none. I've been on cruises, but none of these cruises. you know.
I've only been on when I'm working.
Yeah. Now it seemed the crowd, there's already video on YouTube. I saw a video of your performance on YouTube
It
from
happened
the
so
yeah,
fast, man.
yeah, yeah.
I'm
Now
not
it,
really surprised. I haven't seen anything though.
yeah, yeah, there's a couple clips out there. I think Uncle Tom's Cabin, Cherry Pie, and but it seems like the crowd
Oh,
is
you know
really
it's us.
yeah, the crowd is really quiet. It appeared. Is it do
Uh,
you is it a different feel playing on a cruise than say like at an arena?
do you know what? Okay, I had somebody else. I have not seen any of this. I
Uh,
had someone else mention this to me. I'm gonna have to go look at it. But I had
yeah.
a friend who was a musician say watch something. It was, oh my god, it sounds great. But was the audience in or not? And I asked him why. It's like, well, even one of the commenters said, oh, they were, it was some sort of snide comment that the crowd wasn't into it or anything.
Yeah.
I swear to you, there must be something weird with the acoustics. They were loud as hell both nights,
Really?
and it's weird. Maybe a little. I noticed it a little more energy on Monday night than Tuesday night. Like that's now I'm
Mhm.
nitpicking.
Yeah,
Dude,
yeah.
I could go over the minutia of getting
Yeah.
inside my own head about the show, but the acoustics of the theater that we played in were kind of dry and not live, made so that the sound guys can do a great job. And there isn't a bunch of like you play old theaters and the sound bounces around the room so much you don't know where one is, or like the echo's crazy and there's all these, different sound anomalies. I call them psychoacoustics, where you can't get a handle on what's going on. This was a very dry, dead room. In that sound, they probably had a lot of sound deadening, and it was designed acoustically. Kind of like a recording studio, like where the control room is like mine. Like I've got sound deadening up on the walls in my little home studio, where I shut the doors and seal it off, and there's no slap, there's no echo. It could have been part of that, where it's sound to someone's phone.
Yeah. Yeah. It looked like it was someone's phone. I'll
Yeah,
send you the link and you can see what I
yeah.
was saying.
I
But
mean, I can go on
I was
YouTube
like, wait
now
a
and probably
minute.
look it up.
I was like, how in the world is everyone not saying nothing? You know,
Yeah,
it was
I'll have to
weird.
look at it as well. It was funny that you're the second person today that told me somebody I was
That's
talking to.
funny. That's
Yeah.
funny. Does that drive you nuts to see all your performances on YouTube?
It doesn't drive me nuts because I rarely, if ever, watch any of
Okay.
it. I
Okay.
know what I'm doing in real time, and I know what it was like. Now, the interpretation of, like you said, the acoustic, like I was saying earlier, the
Mm,
acoustics of a room through somebody's phone with the best is when you're out and somewhere and afterwards you see a YouTube video or any video of like your performance, and there's a guy standing, he's filming like this with all his friends around
yeah.
him singing, and they're all slightly out of key, and you can barely hear me because the people closest to him are these. So you never know. The other impression I got from my friend that was the video he was talking about was filmed from pretty close. So
No, the one I saw was back a little bit.
oh, okay.
Hmm.
But yeah, look at that. Modern
Yeah.
technology.
Yeah.
Everybody
I don't know.
knows.
I don't know.
Oh man,
Let-
man, who knows?
yeah.
That's the thing. It's being live in the room. I know our crew and the sound and lights people, all those, they do a great job. The concert experience is one thing. I don't think it translates. All the technology is fantastic, but it just doesn't. Yeah, it's like taking a like stand there in front of a mountain and taking a picture and sending it home to somebody. The first thing you say is like, "These pictures do this no justice." The smartphone has kind of
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
tainted what real life shows are like.
But let's go back a little bit to early before your career, I guess. So you grew up in, I believe, New York, New Jersey area, right? You were in
Yeah,
that music scene.
I was born in the Bronx, and my parents moved us, well, kids to, you do the move to the suburbs, have a better life than I had, growing up my mom in the South and my dad in the North Bronx. So, uh, but proximate enough to the city, yeah, in the suburbs in New Jersey, but hopping a skip and you're across the PATH train, or you're over a bridge and you're back in Manhattan, and or out on the island. And I went to all those clubs and all those places, and you couldn't stop me from going back in the city.
Were you a singer from the start or a guitar player, or what did you start with when you started to cut your teeth in the music scene?
In the scene as a sometimes keyboard playing, sometimes guitar playing lead singer. in like cover or half cover, half original bands, that thing. When the scene supported it, because there was such a huge cover scene, and you could barely get arrested playing your own, unknown original material in bars and clubs, even theaters, unless there was some sort of event like uh, you know, did the whole club scene. Maybe stayed in the cover scene a little too long, but it felt like long to me, but it really wasn't long if I think about it chronologically. I started to write more and realized that I didn't want to just be in a cover band. It was fun to sing those songs. You learn a lot though. You cut your teeth and you get, I mean, I've always referred to it as touring maturity. You figure out what it's like to survive on a night with no monitors, or in a place where everything goes wrong or whatever, or you're practically gray and green from the flu, but you do the show must go on thing and you just get through it. So I think that teaches you a lot, that people that never do it don't have that same perspective.
Now, were you around in the scene at the same time? I think there was like Trickster was from that area, Danger Danger. They were all from that area around that late 80s
Yes.
when you were there, right?
Yeah, and we all knew each other. I actually stopped playing cover stuff for the large part, or being in a band that played covers in like I guess it was like 88, I think, maybe early 89. But I was already in another band that was showcasing in the city. I kind of finished out tenure in a cover band while I was already 6 months to a year in one or two other bands that I'd play gigs, and then I'd go into Manhattan and go showcase for labels and write during the day, like off days.
What
So I
band was
was,
that with?
um, which one?
What were you
The original.
showcasing when you were showcasing? Who were you with?
Had a band with some guys that had kind of found me in the scene. We had a demo deal on Epic Sony, but the band didn't have a name at the time. It was one of those things where uh, you were just, given some dough. We see promise, go right, and we'll record a bunch of stuff. And that was one of those false starts that fell through. Now I had a band with a bunch of guys from Jersey, Kenny Dubb and Dave DePietro and Jimmy Callahan, like, and called the Pack, and we had played for everybody, and it opened for bunches of bands. And this is all like very slightly before the Lynch Mob opportunity.
Okay, so then right, that's before Lynch Mob. So then when you get the opportunity for Lynch Mob, that kind of just almost, I won't want to say fell in your lap, but it was almost, you got a call, right, from a mutual friend. Is that how that went down?
Uh, Mick Brown loves this story. It's just his favorite. Uh, he's like, Robert came and he stole our gig, stole a gig from everybody. Yeah, I had found out through a friend that Lynch Mob was auditioning, and I didn't really want to. It was interesting to me, but I didn't. It was kind of right through a mutual friend and just happenstance that I found out they were auditioning. There's no nepotism in my family. I didn't come from any other musical background other than a little hereditary from my dad, and I've been playing piano since I was a little kid and sang in all around the house or in church, like, and I just kind of developed it mostly naturally, and did take lessons when I started really singing. So I did develop it properly and not blow my voice out. Like, I learned how to sing, still all in the New York, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, New Jersey scene, that whole area. The Lynch Mob thing came up, and I didn't know anybody on the West Coast except for, well, I really didn't. I knew guys in New York, and I had some friends, one at a label, one attorney, and then one manager. And I called, God, I think I called Derek Simon, and I said, hey, this Lynch Mob is auditioning. Oh, an attorney, Bill Barrel. I knew Ron Lafitte, he had managed, God, at that point, Sacred Reich, and he was a label guy, but I knew a few people in the industry, and I made a phone call, and I think I got to Ron and called him and said, hey, I hear Lynch Mob is auditioning. I don't really know, I can, who should I call? What should I do? I mean, what do you really think about this? So I had to leave it with this is, 19, what was it? It was 91, early 91. I had to leave that message with his answering service. Apparently he got it. And by the time I thought about it again, he had reached out to Max Norman, who had produced the first Lynch Mob record, Howard Kaufman, who was managing Lynch Mob at the time, and Bob Krasnow, the president of Elektra Records. And totally just on my one message, hey man, it's me. I'm just wondering what this thing is about. He called out all these guys and go, oh, I found your boy. He's in New Jersey. Here's his number. So like the next day, phone ring, phone ring, phone ring. Hey, when do you want to come out and audition? I'm like, who are you? You know? And then they arranged it. Management called and they arranged it. And I told them I needed to go buy the Lynch Mob cassette and go learn it.
Never heard this band in my life.
I guess I could get some. I'd heard it on the radio and I'm like, I thought it was really cool, but I'm not going to go there and pretend I know these songs.
Right,
It's like,
right.
I think I might be able to get to a Dawkins song or two. And I know a bunch of, I'm writing a bunch, but I know a bunch of Aerosmith and Led Zeppelin, maybe if you want, like,
Right.
but give me a week. So they called and they slipped me in with the dozens of other people that they had been arranged to audition with. Because again, unbeknownst to me, I'm in a cave writing songs, trying to figure this out with my band, and I get this opportunity. Just kind of just happens. They had put an article in like Metal Edge and Guitar World, and the news had gotten out. They were looking for a singer, and people had sent them. When I got to my audition at the air park in Scottsdale at their warehouse where they had everything set up, it was like a concert, the back line, everything set up. There were like FedEx box, like cardboard boxes, moving boxes full of CDs and cassettes and 8x10s and pictures and stuff.
That had
Like
to be a nightmare for them.
boxes. Uh, that's when it dawned on me, like, oh shit, people want this gig. All right. You know, and I kind of slipped in between a bunch of other people that were going to audition because on Ron's word, they called and said, hey man, whenever you want to come out. And I said, well, what do you want us to do? I was like, well, I got to go learn some songs and I'll fly myself out. And that was Mick's joke. He's like, Robert didn't cost us a cent. He came in and killed it.
Yeah.
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 So that
Well,
was,
I mean, that's with my experience in this business. I mean, you have to have the ability, but it's a lot of it's who you know in the
and
business.
it's the hang, and it's just being
Hmm.
like the guys that are side players that get gigs, and I've spoken to so many musicians who I've been like so lucky to make friends with. And it is about the hang
Hmm.
and how, you could be the greatest player in the world. And if you rub somebody the wrong way, you're not getting the gig or
Yeah.
you won't last long.
Well, a lot of times too,
You know?
you don't have to be the best player, to get the gig.
Because it's the hang, and it's
Right.
because it's, because you have to spend, I mean, once you do this a little bit, you learn that it's spending so much time in each other's pockets and in planes and on buses and, in the best
Oh
and
yeah.
worst circumstances. And that's when you're tested.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're
So
right.
when
Yeah.
you get to your Lynch Mob the audition, when you first show up there, I mean,
Mhm.
were you a little were you nervous? I mean, it's George Lynch and Mick Brown. You're following the footsteps of Don Dokken and Ani Logan,
Yeah. I
you
mean,
know?
seriously, not in a cocky way. It's for me, it feels like anxious and not anxiety, like not in a negative way. I still get the, if you're doing it right, you still feel this way a little bit, even now, like getting on stage, like right before I am anxious. I'm like, I want to go now. I want to do it now. Uh, so I think it could be conceived as, nervousness, I guess. And yeah, I mean, it was a big deal. I don't know if I grasped it completely at the time. I just went in and I had some songs rehearsed. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go and sing these songs and see what happens. And I ended up being there for like hours.
Yeah.
We
How
ran out.
how was it working with George? I've never met George. I've never had him on a show. I've interviewed Mick before, and Mick's a blast. He's
Yeah,
something else, that guy. But
exactly.
how was it working with George? Was he serious? Was he joking around?
He was a little more serious, and he's a quiet guy. If you see him in interviews, he's kind of soft spoken, and like the joke is when George calls you, your phone rings and, nowadays you get a smartphone, you caller ID, you know exactly who it is. He's in your list of contacts or whatever. And I'll go, hey, man. And he'll go, um, um, Robert? I'm like, you called me. You know it's me. Hey, it's George. Yeah, I know. What do you want? You know, but he's very, very inward thinking. Like he's a super smart guy. And clearly he's an unbelievably talented guitar player. Um, yeah, he was a little more quiet, rode up on his Harley. He was the last one in, I think, because I knew, we found out that I think I met Anthony first. And Ant and I had been, well, yeah, Ant picked me up and took me to rehearsal from my hotel. So we got to talk and we found out that, him growing up being a Brooklyn kid and me a Bronx kid and then moving to Jersey and being away from the city and then back, like we had been in the same rooms at the same parties and didn't know each other and had
Yeah.
never met.
Wow.
And like
That's
so
crazy.
many mutual contacts and friends and experiences that I think that was a very comforting thing right from the beginning, probably. Like I'm walking in with a guy who's my age from New York. He's already in the band and he's coming. He's like, he already had that vibe of this is the guy, this is the guy, this is the guy, before a note. Um, and then Mick and George were the Dokken component, the older guys. They're like 8, 9 years and older,
Veterans.
whatever.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, I mean a little of that, but they were. I think once I started getting going, and you knock a couple of songs out, and you feel good about them, the nervousness goes away.
Sure. Sure. Now, why didn't Lynch Mob continue? Was it just that time in the music scene that it was just we passed that style, or
The
what happened there?
I through no fault, I don't think. Like it's always you can always hindsight it. Um, the demos for that record, many of which George showed me licks at the end of that audition. That's why I spent an extra hour there, 2 hours there, and they ran DAT tapes of the audition, everybody's audition, I think, up to that point. And George just fed me licks, and I just scattered over them, and a lot of those became, no kidding, the foundation of that record that we did
Wow.
because he had some solidified riffs and Mick would play and song ideas and they had probably worked out a couple of things with no idea what to do vocally or waiting for singers to interpret them. And that's probably one of the reasons that I ended up with that gig is just off the top of my head singing melodies and singing in tongues or no language or whatever, or putting a few words here or there. We listened back to those and I'm like, oh, I just did that off the top of my head. And George is like, this is amazing. We should finish this. So that became that first record, a lot of it. But we
That's a
finished it with
gift.
Keith Olsen. We finished it with Keith Olsen in the studio, did a little writing session or two to with his wonderful knowledge of rock and pop and just he was such a great songsmith and arranger, producer.
Hmm.
Uh, I think we made a little bit too slick a record. When George and I were sitting the first few months I was in the band prior to getting Keith to be our producer, and we were developing those song ideas, they sounded darker, heavier. I'm sure he'll admit the same thing. Uh, Not that it wasn't, we weren't drawing from, we were drawing from, I wanted to make it purposeful and not poppy. I wanted to make it darker and a little grittier and whatever. When we started with Keith and then the direction of the label, I think it became a little too clean. Maybe a
You
little
were
too
feeling that as it was progressing, or no? You
maybe
didn't notice
towards the
that?
end
No.
result, but the label loved it. Like I remember Bob Krasnow coming into the room to listen with Keith on the, when the label guy, the head of the guy, comes in and listens, and some other, A&R and executives from Elektra in California, and they all dug it so much. And we went with Tangled, was first single with the horns in it. And the horns were Keith's idea. To that idea, I thought, well, okay, Foreigner had horns and he produced Foreigner. And I mean, Aerosmith had saxophone. I mean, come on, it's a natural progression. Let's try it. Maybe that was a reason. Second single was Dream Until Tomorrow. It was. I thought it was a fine ballad,
Hmm.
but for whatever reason, it was the time period,
Yeah.
92.
Yeah.
Janie and I had big talks about, Dog Eat Dog, because they tried to grit up a little more and came out with that record. And
It
it
was
was
a
just
great
on that
record.
cusp where, and I and funny how life works, right? I love those songs. sang a few the other night. Uh, yeah, man, it could have just been the time period. Scenes eat themselves after a while, and if you're perceived as one thing when another cool thing comes along, you're cast aside to a certain degree. And as I remember it, after that record cycle, we are sitting there very early '93, and maybe a little common disillusionment with all of it. I will tell you dead honestly, Anthony wanted to quit the band.
Mm-hmm.
And his reasons were his reasons, and I respect them.
Sure.
George was doing a solo record with a bunch of other singers that was like, dude, Lynch, it says so in the name of the band. Lynch Mob is your solo band. Come on.
Mm-hmm.
I guess there was maybe a little resentment about that. Um, Honestly, I don't know how things would have turned out, but George and I spoke very early '93, and he suggested us doing a third Lynch Mob record. Elektra was going to give us the money to do it, but it would have come out until, wouldn't have come out until probably what, '94, end of '93, '94. Look at what the music scene was like in '94.
Yeah.
Would we have been as well regarded? Would it have been, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Would we
Probably would
have
just got
gotten the
brushed
same
aside.
play from the label? And in my infinite wisdom at 27, well, 20, just turned 28, was, and George had even mentioned, well, we could get Jeff Pilson. If Anthony really wants to quit, Jeff can play. And I said, well, that's 3/4 of Dokken. Why don't you get Don Dokken and call it Dokken? That's exactly, and I swear to you, unquote, like that's what I said.
He probably didn't like that, did he?
No, no. And I didn't say it like a dick, but I'm like, hey, this is how I feel. And I kind of was cognizant of all of those factors, like I just said. And the thing, and I love Jeff Pilson. I spoke to him last week. Like he and I are, we get
Yeah,
along.
you've worked with him after all this.
I brought him in to produce Louder, Harder, Faster.
Yeah.
Keith Olsen, I brought in to do, the Rockaholic record when we did it. And so I have good relationships, and I pride myself on not pissing too many people off to keep good relationships with people.
Sure.
That probably miffed George and Mick a little bit. But they subsequently kind of did that.
Mm-hmm.
Got back together with Don. I could kind of see the writing on the wall.
Yeah. And that's how you felt. So you were just
Would
saying
it
how
have
you
been?
feel.
Yeah, man, I was a kid. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just turned 60. So what do I know? What did I know
then? So then after Lynch Mob came your Cry of Love involvement, right?
Yeah. I found out a little bit later in '93, maybe late '93, early '94. Yeah, '93, that that Kelly was going to leave the band. And I thought Kelly was awesome. I was friends with those guys. I was friends with their A&R guy and the people at Columbia. Loved that record. And I got a call from their A&R guy and said, Josh, sorry, I think it was Josh Sarbin, or could have been Derek Simon. Like these are all these New York guys that I know, right? And they're like, oh shit, he's not doing anything right now, or they didn't know I was writing songs. I was sitting in my apartment in Tempe writing songs. So that would have been, I guess, '94. And they said, what about Cry of Love? And I'm like, what do you mean? So they told me the story, and I said, sure. Again, a lot of people had sent demos and stuff like that. I flew out, spent a little time in North Carolina with the band, got to know them a little better. Well, got to know them. And they were in such a confused time that they actually, after spending a week and, working on songs and demoing and listening to stuff, and I mean, they had Sass Jordan come in and sing some stuff before me. They had a bunch of other singers that they couldn't decide on. They were in a very indecisive, Audley was not quite sure what to do, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I think he was really feeling not having Kelly, because Kelly was a great fit, but Kelly
he was perfect.
Kelly was a drummer, and I think did not want to be a front man.
Mm-hmm.
I saw them at the Cat Club when they were a brand new band. And I was like, wow, they sound great, but the singer needs to take that hat off and look at the audience, because he's hiding. He's hiding as a front man. And that was just not where my, if you've ever watched YouTube, that's not my, I don't hide.
No, my first band, Cry of Love, was the first band that my first real band opened for. We opened for them on the first album. I think it was right before Might have been right before Peace Pipe came out, or right as it was coming out. It was real early in their career.
What venue? Where?
It was at the Rocket Club in Tampa, Florida.
Oh, dig it. Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Hmm. So
Yeah.
great guys. And I thought that first record was amazing.
Oh my God, I love Brother, and those songs are huge. John Custer, amazing.
Yeah.
Did an
It,
amazing
it,
job on the record.
it was great. And then you came in. I found my cassette of the one with you. I don't know why I have the first record on CD, but this one on cassette. I don't know why. Was still buying cassettes apparently.
Funny is I almost put that hat on that I'm wearing in that inner
Oh yeah,
inner.
in the inside.
It's in my closet. I'm like I've spent a full day. I'm like I'm putting a hat on and doing this thing. Yeah. So I get an opportunity, but this is truth. They Oddly, and I sat and he's like, man, I just don't know. I just don't know, and I'm not sure we're the right fit. And because of that, I went home, and I wanted that gig. Like for
Yeah.
me, it was, God, this is weird. And so I flew home at the end of '94, beginning of '95, whatever it was. But yeah,
Mm.
so when I went out there, it was kind of like a false start, and I'd heard some of the material and gone through the whole process, and I just didn't seem right to him, I don't think. And I don't know exactly what he's looking for. And Freed and I get along great. Like there's no weirdness at all.
Well, he may not have known what he was looking for.
Right. And they are he was reeling from that losing Kelly and I'm gonna go find a different guy and just do a different thing. And what do I do? Um, I came home to Arizona and then the spent a few months here and then got the Ozzy opportunity, which I didn't work on at all. That dropped in my lap because of music, because of mutual friends we had. Sharon went looking for a background singer for Oz because they wanted to try having a real live human and not run, to their credit, not run any tapes or not do any, anything like samples. And my name, she just started calling producers and studios, and my name came up like 3 out of the first 4 calls she made.
From people you know.
And then that's again,
Yeah.
that pissed too many people off, kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I got a call from my friend Michael. I think I got a call, or did I just get a call from Sharon? Jeez, you know, I think I could. Sharon just got my number and called me. Uh, so then that kind of was a band-aid on the Cry of Love situation for me, emotionally and professionally. Clearly, to go on a world tour around the world.
Was that satisfying for you though, being a lead singer?
If Ozzy called you and asked you, would you do it?
Well, I know that. I know the answer to that, but I'm saying for you personally, was it like I really want to be a lead singer, but I'm
Yeah,
standing on the side?
but I had just not gotten that gig yet. You know what I mean? The Cry of Love gig, and it came along at the right time. Uh, I had just gotten a publishing advance on a record, so I have to tell this too. During all this time, after Lynch Mob, and for that next couple of 92, 93, 94, 95, Keith Olsen, to his credit, God bless Keith Olsen up in rock and roll heaven, would call me, and I was his background singer guy, and I was his song doctor guy. He would call me and say, hey, can you come out to Malibu, come out to LA? I'll put you up and you come stay in the studio. I've got a band, and the singer either needs a little help or they're a band from Germany and they want to Americanize their lyrics a little bit, a la, Scorpions or whatever, and they're very German. And I know you speak German a little, but enough, and but you're an American singer, or this other band or this other band. Keith would call me, hire me, pay me pretty damn well, and sometimes that's all it. I didn't even get record credit. I just, got the dough. That turned into one of the bands I worked with had called me a couple of months before Sharon did and said, hey, EMI Publishing is going to call you and ask you where you want them to wire the money. And I'm like, what money? I got paid for the session. Keith paid me. He's like, oh no, you rewrote our songs. and the band credited you, gave you like, whatever 15 some odd percent of the record, because I rewrote a bunch of lyrics. I was a song doctor with them in the studio and some background vocals. So all of a sudden I had this advance and I'm like going, let's buy a house, like let's go get and I was having a house built and all these other situations, personal and professional, going on. And then Sharon calls me. So I was like, okay, I'll go do that. So I go do that. And yes, it took a while. So for me, that was just a wonderful experience. When am I ever going to get the opportunity to scan? I'm going to, that, opportunity knocked. I'm in. The reason I left, and I did it for like 11 months, the reason I left is because I was sitting in the Athenaeum Hotel in Detroit, getting ready to play Detroit, and Audley Freed calls me. And he's like, man, it's time. We're going to make a record. We want you to be the singer. Can you do it? And I'm like, I have 3 months of Ozzy dates still to do. And it's Columbia Records. It's the same label. Have Donnie Einer call Sharon Osbourne. Have Josh call, like, make it work. Yes, I'm your boy. I want to do this, but I'm so employed right now.
Yeah.
And being paid really well.
I didn't realize you did it that long.
Yeah, like Thanksgiving through August. So like almost a year. Well, yeah, before Thanksgiving. But I think my last show was Donington in August of '96. So '95 to '96, I was that guy. After that phone call with Audley, I thought about it for a minute and figured out I asked Sharon and Oz to meet me on the bus, just us. And I looked at them and I said, I love you guys, and you guys treat me like gold, platinum, and diamonds. But this dropped in my lap. Here's the circumstance. I will give you as much notice as you want me to, but I want to be a front man again. And I'm behind the curtain. My name's on the program, but nobody knows I'm there. I don't do press. I can show up in a pair of swim trunks and flip flops if I want and do my gig. It was like a secret, and I didn't really mind that. But I wanted to be a front man again, and that opportunity came up. So that's what really crystallized it for me. And they said, okay. Sharon was very gracious, and Oz just looked at me as like, get me through Donington, because we already knew all the dates. It was like, this was a couple of months prior. So I did those couple of months. My last show was early August, mid-August, '96, Donington Park, and which is now called Download, and that was it.
Did
And
you go right from there to North Carolina?
No, I flew home. But yeah, very shortly after that, I was in Raleigh making a record. Yeah, doing pre-production.
Okay. So you find yourself in Cry of Love now. That, and again, like Lynch Mob, that didn't last too long, right? Before you guys called it quits.
Again, I heard somebody make the joke of, if you want your band to break up, hire me as your singer.
Well, that doesn't work for the next band we're going to talk about. So.
Of course, exactly, and yes, it did happen twice. For the record, that happened twice. So yeah, again, that was a very small budget. That was a case of music still being a little weird, and the record, Oddly wrote some badass songs. I mean, you own it.
Yeah.
So, or you're lying, and that's your friends. I don't know.
No,
I believe you, Joe. I believe you.
Okay.
So, I'm still fiercely proud of those performances and that record as a whole. What the stamp I was able to put on those songs. I oddly had a ton of time to write. So when I got in that band to do this, it was basically like, man, interpret these a little, but I really like them. So I've written oddly had written all this material. And so once we picked the songs for the record, it was, I respectfully took a lot of direction from Audley and from Custer. But I sing like me, so I have to sing like me. But I'm more connected in a way. I'm way more connected to that blues, Southern tinged, if you want to call it that. But for me, it's like American soul. That's more me than what the Lynch Mob record was. But it's a weird thing when you're an actor. You can play a priest in one movie, and then you can play a serial murderer in the next, or a ship's captain, and then you can play, something else, and then you're applauded for how your range is. You're so what a range as an actor.
Right.
You can make one kind of record with a band and perceived one way, and you come and do a different thing, and somebody's going to say, "Oh, one of them's not really you. You're not being true to yourself. Which one is really you?" Well, fuck you. They're both of me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's honestly how I feel about that to this day.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
And
but
you feel
I
the
love
same with Warrant as well? If you had to put all three bands, it's all you, but is it they're the same, they're rock music, but it's a little bit different. Like you said, Cry of
yeah,
Love was kind of
but they're
southern,
different.
Warrant's more.
I have influences all over the map, and I'm not a super like I'm not only one trick pony. I'm not a chameleon, but I'm also not just one thing. And I have different sides and different loves and different ideas about what I'm capable of doing. And I don't know where it comes from, but thankfully enough, I'm able to do some of that. Not everything I'm going to do, but a lot, a good amount of it. And the bands are different. Dynamics are different between, it's relationships with different people. And it's, if you're asking the original music I did with Warrant, the last two records, and anything we can do in the future, uh, I got in the band a couple of months in, and Dixon calls me up. It's like, "Hey, Mace, you write songs, right?" I'm like, "Yeah." Well, let's get to work. So both of those records have, that's a whole ton. Like Jerry and I did the majority of the writing. Everybody puts their 2 cents in, but I brought like 8 songs to the first Warrant record, and I think 6 or 7 to the second one.
I think all the records, the Lynch Mob, the Cry of Love, and your Warrant records, and even the Warrant old songs are, you put your stamp on those. Like that's not easy to do, following Jani Lane and Kelly and Oni and
Well, I have
Don.
a different. I mean, we're voices are like fingerprints or whatever whatever analogy you want to make. I never wanted to make it seem like a caricature ever, but I wanted to make it seem like I was respectful of the material. I, however anybody wants to interpret that, your viewers are gonna say what they're gonna say,
Yeah,
and
you know how
again,
that goes.
and it's funny. Joey Allen, super funny, but then like he can be super stark and serious. And if you ever have a conversation with him, you'll know within 5 minutes you'll know exactly what he thinks and exactly how he feels. He said in an interview, it's like talking about me. It's like, dude, my singer's got to have the thickest skin and the biggest fucking balls in the world to to go up against any bit of comments adversity. I could give a rip. I love our fans, and most of them are very respectful, and a lot of them get exactly what I'm doing. We're a live band. We don't run any tape. There's no trickery. It's 5 guys up there. We actually added our stage right tech to play, because he's a really good musician, to
He's in
play a
that
couple
video I saw.
to play a couple of live keyboard parts.
Yeah.
And when it came to doing like Uncle Tom's Cabin, I wanted to make I that was my idea to go, "Hey James, I want," because he could probably play on guitar. I know he can, but I'm like, I want to do that thing of, it gives us a little opportunity, before before uh, before Uncle Tom's and Cherry Pie towards the end of the set, to say that, like, if you bought the album and you bought Cherry Pie album and saw that single and all that stuff, and you watched MTV, I always say, "Where were you the first time you heard this?" And it's easy for him just to go and fire that off, because it is lifted directly from the record, or it's the master tape. It's not from it's mastered. That's the only part of our show that isn't absolutely 1,000,000,000% us really singing and playing. And there's, it's just it's that acoustic, and James actually manually plays the banjo parts on the keyboard
Does he?
that
Okay.
accompany it. He's going crazy
That's
about it.
awesome.
But yeah, man, it's I always want to faithfully reproduce to the best of my ability what the fans remember, but I'm me. And I don't ever want to pretend to be Janie. He and I were friends. Our friendship, I just told, it's funny, on this 80s cruise, I just told Alan Hunter this story about how the friendship Janie and I developed while they were making Dog Eat Dog and we were making that Lynch Mob record was instrumental in us opening for Warrant in arenas in 92 when both of our records came out. And that's where we got to be friends. And Lane and I hung out many a night, talked about tons of stuff, you know. So
Did that make it difficult for you to, I know he was not in a great place when you stepped in the band, but did that make your friendship make it difficult for you to take his job kind of?
I wrestled with it. And, but to your point, somebody's going to get mad at me if I say it this way, but I don't really care. It's, I was, I was asked to do that. And I was asked to do that in a like a relief pitcher kind of position in the beginning because it was still up in the air whether he was going to, you know, be
Yeah,
okay.
it was just temporary for you at that moment, right?
Yeah, yeah. It was
Yeah.
feeling when they asked me, it was like, hey
Yeah.
man, you know, with the caveat that he could still get it together, but he's been in rehab a bunch of times and the road is no place for him. It's really unsafe. We don't want him to die on the road. I don't want to wake up on a gig day and we can't and we won't answer his and he won't answer his phone. You know, nobody wanted that. And when I met them coincidentally at Rocklahoma prior to that, that was the situation. So a few weeks later, he had gotten worse, and it was really apparent that it was going to be really, really bad. They had obligations to promoters, you know, tons of people on the line with jobs and stuff. And it's like, we need to finish these shows. Can you just finish a few shows and then we can see? We'll get a gauge. And then, you know, they forced that. They did. He probably would have objected, you know, objected and didn't want to go willingly, but he was in no state to go out and do it. So they said, "Hey, can you do these shows?" And I wrestled with it. I did, uh, but I knew the place he was in, and I knew that there were four guys. You know, it's like you're on a bus and one of the wheels has got a flat, but all the other ones want to go, and the engine wants to go, and there's gas in the car, and you know, there's no reason why they shouldn't finish those obligations. And everybody else was so into it, they convinced me it's like we should do this, even if it's only for the short term. And I said, if he can come back, I'm out. Okay, here you go. Here's the keys back. You go drive. Good, good on you. I'm glad. You know, I even said, man, when they got all five people to back together, because it's funny because at the time it was Warrant, Cinderella, Lynch Mob, I think, or maybe Cinderella, or I don't remember, but they were the headliner with all five original guys. I actually text Lane and called him to congratulate him prior to that whole thing when the news came out, like the year before. And they only lasted like 11 or 12 shows. So anyway, sorry.
Did you guys ever have a conversation after you were in the band about that whole situation?
Very, very briefly, he became once he wasn't getting better and he was in a super, super dark place. Like I can't even tell you. I won't, there are things I won't ever say. Okay. I just, but out of respect, but he was in an incredibly dark place and was not going to fix himself. And it was really, really bad and apparent. And I took a little bit more of a, okay, I'm staying in this band. We're going to, you know, because it had gone well and people didn't, you know, throw rotten eggs at me and, you know, kick me off the stage. Obviously, they were like, well, we can continue to do this. And if Janie really isn't going to be able to come back, to a certain degree, he was in rehab a bunch of times, man. I mean, a bunch of times. And I never want to make a definitive statement whether or not it was, you know, something he couldn't get out of or didn't want to get. I don't know because he went really dark after that and we didn't speak. I saw him at one show. Two things happened. Um, my very long time friend Eddie Trunk called me and said, "Now I can clear a couple things up. You know what? Fuck it, I'm going to be dead honest. I hope you appreciate it
Yes,
because
of
I
course.
because I don't mind having the place to say it. Uh, and maybe it'll be the next quote on Blabbermouth tomorrow or
Well, we
whatever.
already talked about that.
We can call those guys too. I'll call him. Um, um, Eddie called me. Eddie Trunk called me and said, "Man, I want you to hear this first from me." Because he and I had been back and forth with, "Oh, dude, you should come on that metal show. I'll get you on my show." Like, yeah, we would love to. It'd probably be me and Dixon, but we would love to. He's like, okay, well, that would be great. Let me know. I'll let you know. And it had been, maybe a year, months. Janie had been alive. I'd been in a band a year or two. Or almost 3 years. He called me and said, I want you to hear this from me first. I fought for you. They're going to have a couple of singers on. They want VH1 wants Janie, and I know it actually pains me to say that a lot of reality television they want to see the potential of a train wreck or something like that. I don't know that that was their motivation, but Eddie, to his credit, called me personally. Is like, hey, I just want you to know before this goes down, they're going to have Lane on with a couple of other singers, and it's former singers of bands or whatever, looking back on the Sunset Strip, whatever the theme was, and they're going to have Janie on. And I just, as a friend, I wanted to call you first. I'm like, okay, I get it. I respect that. Hey man, he made those records. He's the guy they want. I get it. Ego in check, no hurt feelings. And when he went on, um, I watched it when it aired, and he said something that was absolutely 180 degrees not the truth. And I feel even shitty saying about that because he can't fist fight me in public or on the internet and defend himself at this point. But he, even to my eyes, and afterwards I spoke with Ed, I'm like, man, he said he was in great shape, and he said he was optimistic, and he said he was healthy, and he said he was writing songs, and he said all this stuff. He even talked about our past because I think Eddie brought it up. And then he said something that absolutely wasn't the truth. And I've kept my mouth, I won't even talk about it. I've kept my mouth shut about it. Uh, to be honest, I took it as, I wasn't pissed off, but I took it as like, he's really, really hurt over this and he's not happy. And I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna take it any further. And I never said anything about it until just now. So, but even now, I'm a little private. I just don't want to even talk about it. So, and then a couple of weeks later, after that aired, he had passed. And it was August, and he was 47. With this, I'm 6 months younger than him. So yes, in a lot of ways. I mean, I don't know if that I don't even know if I answered that question right. But
You're just being honest. You're good. You're good. So
yeah,
you've been in the band though since 2008, right?
correct. September
So
two.
this band didn't end like the other two that you got into.
No, magically enough, there's a silver lining. We just we keep playing, and people keep. Honestly, again, it's five guys that are doing it for the right reason, and I'm doing it for the reason that I'm never happier than when I'm on my side of a mic and I got people on the other side.
Yeah,
Singing live is the coolest thing in the world, and I have an opportunity to do it. And yes, part of it is a feel good thing. Part of it is always going to be ego because I'm a lead singer and proud of it. But there's a huge component that's nostalgic for fans, and for me, I feel happily obligated to empower that legacy of
sure.
that material. And I pay tribute to him every night. And I mean it sincerely. And the fans are great. And we get to still do this and play these songs. At the end of the day, man, it's the songs.
Hmm.
They want to
Yeah.
go out and have
And
fun.
Warrant's one of those bands, one of the nostalgic acts out there. I guess you can call them nostalgic acts that,
We're classic rock now. How'd that happen?
yeah, that are
Here,
still going strong, right? Like Warrant, Quiet Riot, all these bands.
we still play 50,
LA
60
Guns is
people.
still out there,
Yeah, exactly.
and still being very successful.
And for the fans' perspective, just so they know this, we in those bands, all us guys, we talk like that. We're like, dude, we still get to do this. This is the coolest thing in the world. We're so thankful. Like nobody looks at it in a condescending to the audience or contemptuous or
Oh man, they got
slagging
to
it
be
off. We're like,
grateful.
fuck, this is great.
Yeah, I mean, 20 years ago, it wasn't like that. You know what I
No,
mean?
yeah, exactly.
So to
Like
have it come back the way it is right now with all these acts is amazing.
and we're all older, hopefully wiser, a little happier, in a lot of ways, the guys that are still around doing it, and very thankful. I think the universal thing is everybody really loves what they do. I think that shows, that translates. If you're just doing it for a buck or you're just doing it for some other, just destructive ego kind of reason, it doesn't last. And I think audiences perceive that too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I
I
talked to a lot of these guys on the show and they all seem very grateful about it. You
yeah.
know, it's a great thing. And
And there,
Warrant has pretty much the whole band intact.
yeah, I mean,
I
you
mean,
know,
Jerry's in and out, but you know,
and Jerry's right, exactly. Jerry's has never been anything except Jerry Dixon from Warrant, like professionally. You know what I mean? Like he's been
yeah.
in that band, and he's always been. He and Eric were the OGs and the stalwart. Continuing even through those whatever you want to call it, the years where their era of rock fell out of favor for other
Hmm.
times and things, and it was not as bright and sunny, a little more darker times, but they stuck it out and
Yeah.
tested them for doing that
Yeah.
to kind of like, for better or worse, we're gonna be in your eyesight. We're gonna play gigs because this is what we love to do and we're gonna do it. But correct. With Joey and Steven and Eric, and Jerry is actually coming back and playing more gigs. But again, credit to Robbie Crane, who's known Jerry since Robbie was probably 14 or 15 years old. He's just a couple of years
Yeah.
younger than
Robbie
us.
was in that scene back then.
Dude, that guy's a brother. I mean, in every sense of the word, I've known him as long as I've known Lane and Lynch and like making that first Lynch Mob record. I've known them all
Hmm.
those years. And we all get along. Robbie Crane is the best hang, sings great. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
I could
That's
throw him
awesome.
parties. I'm like, dude, this is your party. He's like, what is it? What is it? He finds it. It's like, is this cool? Is it playing it? Great. I'm like, okay, perfect. And everybody in the band sings and it works out great. Again, to we're doing it live, and I wanted it to be genuine and still feel like a little bit of like a shit might go sideways, dangerous rock band. Like I don't
Yeah.
like it too
You got to
pre-planned.
have that. You got to have that a little
It
bit.
isn't rock and roll if you're not doing
Yeah.
a little of
Yeah. Now with Warren, there hasn't been any new music since 2017 that I'm aware of,
that.
right?
Correct.
Is
Uh,
is that is that a conscious choice just to not record new music?
we have something that might happen. I kind of feel that there's that huge nostalgia component. My ego doesn't mean I have to put a record out just for the sake of it. And I understand, you make a certain piece with fans want to come and hear the nostalgia, and that's our role. That's our lane to kind of stay in. If we come up with something great and we want to put something out, we certainly might. I've got ideas. I know Dixon does as well. He and I worked together just a couple of years ago on a bunch of material for something that might have been a record that we just kind of put aside for a minute because he started playing with the band less, and we were, trying to concentrate on just making our live band and our consistent touring as good as possible for us.
Sure. Is there
Um,
really a reason to put out a record for a band like Warrant?
we wrestle with that, but that's the nostalgia component. Like
Yeah.
the only reason I could see, sometimes promoters or agents say, well, we can sell a new tour and a thing. I'm like, yeah, but there's so much nostalgia, and that's what really fans like. We play a couple songs off the two records I did with the band that are, songs we wrote to do that. And people dig it. Like we do louder, harder, and people still like, I get them to scream the chorus and they're still into it. There's a certain component, and I love those people that are into that. But I think as years go by, it's like the one thing is if you're one of the last bands standing, like the herd narrows and you become one of those bands. It can go either way, man. I sometimes I wake up and I'm like, man, we should do a record, and then I go, you know what? I watch the people's reaction to the catalog material, and I still get off on doing it, and so does the band. And it doesn't kill anybody. It's not there's no urgency to put something new out there. The the climate of a band of guys in their 60s, what are we going to get? A radio hit? What
Right.
are we like?
Yeah.
What?
No, that's going to happen.
Radio is gone. That it's a bygone era, and if it makes a good story for interviews, cool. And it's satisfying to play new songs. I will always do that in one respect or another. I write for other people. There's some like film and TV work and stuff that we've all dabbled in.
Yeah.
It's still satisfying,
There's other outlets.
Yeah. And it's something in your soul. It makes you feel good to be creative if you're a songwriter type. But then again, those hits are the hits. They're still fun to play, and that gets a great reaction from the audience. So then, is that my time best served?
Would
You know,
you ever would you ever put out a solo record?
I've been asked, and I play piano. Like I sit and I wake up and make coffee every morning, and go sit at my, I sit at a very nice antique grand piano in my house and go hammer away on it like heavy handed, like I do everything. And I write a ton. I have a ton of guitar stuff and a ton of piano stuff. I would want to do something that wouldn't, if solo, it seems almost gratuitous and weird and like egocentric to do that. But
I mean, it'd just be
I thought I had
for
enough good
you, you
stuff.
know.
Well, I write with a bunch of friends in Nashville, and some in particular you just get on great with, and every time you hang out and do something, it's just magic. We do that. Uh, I might someday. I would almost want to do something to throw a curveball and do like a acoustic piano and voice thing only, or very little instrumentation. Like I wouldn't want to put a rock band together and do it necessarily, because then
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah, you
because
got
then
a
the
rock
natural
band.
thing is if you go play live, you're like, right, I do that. Yeah, that's my
Yeah,
job.
yeah,
I would rather explore something completely different,
yeah. That'd be cool.
or at least genre specifically different. That would, be like, wow, that's that guy, really? He
Yeah.
doesn't scream like he's coughing up a lung. He can actually sing that too. I grew up, man, in love with like my dad's music and crooners and music from the 40s, 50s, and 60s. So
Yeah.
I have a lot of
Yeah.
sides.
Well, you were doing before I let you go here, let's touch on the End Machine for a little bit because those weren't bad records either that you were doing.
Well, I'll take it. They weren't bad.
They weren't bad records.
No, no, no. That was just an opportunity. I think that afforded me a little closure of that, circling back to that. See, here's the callback of that. Why don't we get George and Mick and Jeff, and you know that maybe gave us all a little closure on that conversation, that when Lynch Mob decided to go four separate ways, or two and a half separate ways or whatever.
Who
So
called you, George, to do this, or Jeff? I'm guessing one of them, not Mick.
I'm guessing it was Jeff. To my recollection, again in a hotel at a Warrant gig, sitting there the night before, the night after, or whatever. And I think it was Jeff had called because we had done Louder Harder and got on so well making that record together. He's fantastic to work with, and he's smart musically. And I mean, I've said glowing things about Jeff Pilson, but they
Yeah,
don't
he's
have to
great
stop.
too. I
Uh,
interviewed him when I interviewed Mick back in the day.
oh yeah,
And
yeah.
it was Jeff, Mick, and Reb when Reb was in Dokken.
Oh, gotcha.
So
Young
that
Reb.
was a pretty comical little time we had there.
Our
Those
boy,
all three comedians there.
again, just on the phone with him the other day because we played with Winger 2 weeks ago. Um, I always do my best cover, Dell. I go, Rebel, darling. Call him Young Rebel. Little closure and a little bit of a curveball. We didn't want to make it like Dokken, didn't want to make it too much like anything, but it's natural going to sound like that because it's, that first record, three guys from Dokken and then this guy. So, you know, but I wanted it to be different lyrically. I wanted it to be totally different. So all the lyrics, I mean, I wrote a lot of George and Jeff did the music and then came to me with like overwritten tracks of like tons and tons of shit. And I would just go, here's my melody idea for this. Do you like it? Okay, then I only want it to happen this many times. We need to make an edit because this is going on too. Like, so Jeff was fantastic about that with me. So I would pitch him lyric and melody ideas. And when he loved that, he would go, oh, I see what you mean. And then he'd get cut and paste in Pro Tools and we would assemble the songs that way. Then George would come in and do solos, like so. And Mick plays ass off on that first record. His brother played amazingly, Steve, on the second one. Frontiers, I think, wanted to tap into the Dokken legacy a little more than I did, to be quite honest, again. And the second record we made mostly remotely during COVID, the writing process, it was a little less uh, me coming in with like 90% of the lyric and melody. It was like, let's all put it in a pot and sit behind Zoom meetings and write this shit together. So it was a little more of that. I still like that second record, but I think I like the first one better. And and I believe they really wanted Frontiers as a label wanted to engage the Dokken legacy a little more. And again, here's me coming back saying, yeah, but I'm not Don, and I could do that, but it wouldn't be genuine. And so that's why I didn't do the third one.
That's awesome, man. I mean, you're sticking to your guns. You're doing what you do. It's
Well,
working. It's working for you.
so far,
Yeah.
you know,
So what do
strangest
you
place I've ever known.
what do you have plans? I know Warrant has quite a bit of shows coming up starting March 14th, I think, is your next show.
We've been going. Yeah, we have this weekend off, and then we start up again. March and April are nuts. We often do, and there are cool and hot periods to the seasons as
I
far as
noticed
touring.
you're not doing summer, like June and July. I don't think there's any shows during the summer.
Oh, we have a bunch. We just don't post them all.
Oh, okay.
We traditionally do between 50 and 60, and it can vary from 48 to 60 something, throughout
Okay.
the
Yeah, I
years.
was looking on your website on the Warrant site and it skipped those months. So that's why I was curious.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. I can
Yeah.
go on Tourmaster and figure it out.
No.
Um, like,
But yeah, that's
everybody
awesome.
asks you, so where you been playing? And I'm just like, I don't know. I have an app for that. Let me look.
Yeah. Yeah. Tourmaster app.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
That's
hear I've never seen that app, but I hear
that's our
people
joke.
talk
When
about
anybody asks a question, the pat answer is, have you checked Tourmaster?
it.
Why are you asking me? You have an app on your phone that tells you.
Right, right.
Yeah, man.
Awesome, man. Well, listen, Robert, I appreciate you taking time to chat with me about all your career. You've had a great career and it's
Well, I'm thankful. I mean, it's always just be consistent as you can be. That's always been my philosophy, and just
yeah,
you know
and you've been very consistent.
make some good moves, make some slightly dangerous moves every once in a while if you feel like it.
Yeah.